Now let's turn to the senior advisor to President Obama's re-election campaign, David Axelrod. David, welcome back.
Thanks, David. Good to be with you.
A lot to get to, and I'll allow you to respond to Senator Rubio. I'm sure there's multiple areas where you'd like to do that. I want to start with foreign policy. It's the focus of this final big debate. And on the question of Iran, and the New York Times story this morning, to repeat, saying that there is now the prospect of direct talks between the Obama administration and Iranian officials over their program. What's not finalized, according to the White House, is whether this is a final deal, but there is the potential there. You're here this morning speaking for the president. Why does he think such direct contact may actually be critical at this juncture to avoiding potential military showdown with Iran?
Well, I don't want to go too deeply into what may or may not happen because the White House has said there is, as you say, no deal, and I don't have any inside details of that, nor should I. But here's what I do know. For 2 years, the president traveled the world putting together a withering international coalition, and now the sanctions that they agreed on are bringing the Iranian economy to its knees, and there's a tremendous disquiet in Iran. Their currency has dropped in value by 50%. Their oil business has dropped by 50%. There's restiveness in their political environment there. And they're feeling the heat, and that's what the sanctions were meant to do. So it's not, if they're sensible, they're looking at that and saying it's time to set aside our nuclear ambitions and save our economy. And that's what the president's been working on. That's a project he's been working on for all these years. Remember, when he came to office, we were isolated in our position on Iran and in the world. And today, the world is unified against Iran with us, all because of the leadership of this president.
Let me ask you about Libya. This will certainly come up again in the response to the killing of our ambassador, Chris Stevens, in the Benghazi consulate, as well as 3 other Americans as part of that attack. The issue has been that there's been inconsistency from the administration with regard to how they described this. The president did call it an act of terror the day afterward, but he also made reference in those very same remarks to the potential that this was a response to a video that was getting anti-Islam video that was causing disruptions in Egypt as well. This is how Paul Ryan, of course, the running mate to Governor Romney, is describing the situation. He did it in a radio interview on Friday.
The problem is their story continues to shift. They refuse to answer the basic questions about what happened. And so his response has been inconsistent. It's been misleading. And more than a month later, we still have more questions than answers. The Benghazi thing would be a tragedy in and of itself if it was an isolated incident. The problem is it's not simply an isolated incident, but a picture of a broader story of the absolute unraveling of the Obama administration's foreign policy.
And David, as you know, the argument is that this central claim of the administration to have dealt a withering blow to al-Qaeda, including killing Osama bin Laden, is undermined by an attack like this and further chaos in the Middle East. How do you respond?
Well, I think that's nonsense. Obviously, this was a tragic event, and the president did call an act of terror, not just once, but several times, and asked for and ordered an investigation to get to the bottom of what happened, why it happened, and to bring those who committed this act of terror to justice. And that's what he's going to do. There's only one candidate here who's tried to exploit it from the beginning. Even while the flames were burning in Benghazi, Mitt Romney was sending out political press releases on this, and the whole Republican Party has followed. And on Friday, Chairman Issa in the House on the Republican side released a reef of documents that he asked for that included the names of people on the ground in Libya who are cooperating with us and helping us on these security issues, jeopardizing their lives, carelessly, recklessly putting them at risk, all to score political points in the final weeks before an election. That's disgraceful. The way they've handled this issue is disgraceful. And to hear Paul Ryan make the case, who as Budget Committee chair wanted to cut back on our requests for security funding for these embassies and consulates, makes it even worse.
But this wouldn't be an issue, would it, if the administration had a consistent response to what occurred there?
David, There's an investigation ongoing with the intelligence community. The FBI is on the ground. And we have reported, the administration has reported everything that we've been told, and we've shared it in real time. The fact is, it's a complicated situation. We're thoroughly looking at what happened there and reporting to the American people on it. There's been no inconsistency. There's merely been reports on the data and the intelligence that we've been given, and the intelligence community has been clear on this, that they have been doing the best they can, giving us the intelligence they have. We've been sharing that intelligence, and we'll continue to do so.
Generally, the attack that has come on this president from his opposition, from Governor Romney and from Paul Ryan, and you heard it from Senator Rubio, a lack of a second-term agenda. Is it fair, that criticism? Has the president spent more time trying to disqualify Romney as an alternative than affirmatively saying what a second term would actually look like?
You know, I heard Senator Rubio say what the president's saying around the country. I've never seen Senator Rubio at one of the president's events, but if he did come to one of the president's events, what he'd hear is the president making the case for how we build an education system second to none, so we have the best trained workers in the world, how we build, how we get control of our energy future, not just by drilling for oil and gas, but by commanding the new sources of energy that China and India and Germany and other countries are working on, how we rebuild manufacturing in this country, not by giving tax breaks to companies that move overseas, but by giving tax breaks to the companies that are starting up here, and how we deal with our deficits in a balanced way so that we are cutting back where we have to, asking the wealthy to pay a little bit more, something Governor Romney refuses to do, and investing in those things we need to grow this economy. We have a very specific agenda moving forward. On the other hand, what you hear from Governor Romney are a lot of chapter heads with no chapters and a plan to spend $7 trillion more on tax cuts and more money for the Pentagon that they're not even asking for, with no plan to pay for it. So if there's anyone who's running without a real plan here, it's Governor Romney.
Let me ask you about the state of the race.
To the extent he has one, David, it's going back to the same policies we had under the last administration. Tax cuts for the wealthy, rolling back rules on Wall Street, and hoping that somehow if the folks at the top do well, that the rest of the country will do well. We tried it. It doesn't work. We can't go back to that.
Finally, the state of the race at this point. First, we're beyond the debate expectations nonsense. What are the stakes, though, in this final debate of a serious conversation about differences about foreign policy? Preview that for me.
Well, I think it's going to be an important debate. I don't think any one event is decisive, but this is an important issue. Even though being strong at home and rebuilding our economy is the #1 issue, people want to know that they have a strong, steady hand in the Oval Office, and they don't want someone who's reckless and who's been consistently wrong on foreign policy issues, as Governor Romney has. We all remember his Dukes of Hazzard tour of international destinations over the summer, where he not only roiled countries that are not as friendly to us, but our best ally, Britain. He was wrong on Libya. He was wrong on Iraq. So, you know, people can have a chance to take a measure of these two guys and say, who do I want as the commander-in-chief? Who do I want leading the war on terror? And I think I think that's a very stark contrast.
Finally, state of the race now. As you handicap the final weeks, you heard Chuck Todd with our new numbers, 47-47. Yes. And he said 47 for the president is not a good number for an incumbent. If it was the Sunday before Election Day, you'd be very worried. How concerned are you about that right now, including the fact that in total, Romney seems to have an edge in the battleground states?
Well, first of all, David, I would say on this battleground state issue, you guys also issued polls in the last week that showed us with an 8-point lead in Iowa. I think we had a lead in Ohio. You've showed us having a lead in Florida. And so I don't know how to square all the polling that NBC is releasing. But I do think that this is going to be a very close race. And we've said that consistently. I think if you look back at your tape, every time I visited with you, I've predicted that this will be a close race. But we feel good about where we are. We feel we're even or ahead in these battleground states. And if you look at the early voting that's going on around the country, it's very robust and it's very favorable to us. And we think that's a better indicator than these public polls, which are frankly all over the map.
All right, we're going to leave it there. David Axelrod, thanks very much.
Good to be with you. Thank you.